Our first speaker this morning is Mr. Paul Kiecker, the Acting Deputy Undersecretary for Food Safety at the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Paul was named the Acting Deputy Undersecretary for the Office of Food Safety for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in January 2021. In this role, Kiecker will oversee the Food Safety and Inspection Service, which has regulatory oversight for ensuring that meat, poultry, and processed egg products are safe, wholesome, and accurately labeled. Kiecker previously served as FSIS's administrator. In this capacity, he executed a budget of over $1 billion, advanced the agency's visions and goals, and led innovative solutions to challenges. Kiecker has been with FSIS for more than 3 decades, and throughout that time, he remained committed to ensuring the agency meets its food safety public health goals. On a personal note, have a ton of respect for Mr. Kiecker. Shortly after being named administrator, COVID-19 hit, and so he had the most interesting first year I think an administrator could have ever had. Welcome, Paul. You can start sharing your screen at any time.
All right. So good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you today in the first gathering for 2021. And I would definitely have to agree with what Joe said as it being a very interesting first year. I'm Paul Kiecker. I'm the Acting Deputy Undersecretary for Food Safety at USDA. And Joe asked me to be here today to share some thoughts on what you can expect from USDA's Office of Food Safety and also from the Food Safety Inspection Service in the year ahead. In his final annual address to Congress, Abraham Lincoln referred to the USDA as the People's Department. Over 150 years later, the USDA still touches the lives of Americans every day. With its exceptional reach, the USDA will play an important role in tackling the challenges we're facing today. In this moment, the coronavirus pandemic is our leading challenge. COVID is a national emergency that threatens the lives and the livelihoods of millions of Americans. USDA is prepared to be a leader in supporting the national strategy to combat the COVID-19 pandemic. We have public health expertise, facilities, and established relationships in communities across the country that can play a role in supporting the response. But most importantly, our efforts start at home with our own employees. Their health and safety has always been our top priority, and that will not change. FSIS will continue to make sure that our employees have access to required protective equipment like masks and face shields. And we'll continue to encourage the actions that are effective at curbing the spread of COVID, like hand washing and social distancing. As COVID vaccination ramps up across the country, FSIS has sent a letter to state departments of agriculture and departments of health, reminding them that FSIS employees are essential to securing the nation's food supply. We also requested that states prioritize FSIS frontline personnel for COVID-19 vaccination as part of Phase 1B. In keeping with the recommendations from the CDC's Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, FSIS will continue to look for ways to support and protect our workforce in the face of this pandemic. Our frontline personnel are essential because the work they perform every day ensures the safety of the national food supply. As the public health agency of the USDA, we verify that meat, poultry, and egg products are safe, wholesome, and accurately labeled. FSIS personnel are present in nearly 6,500 establishments across the country, fulfilling our food safety mission. With our mission first and foremost in our mind, I'd like to talk a little bit about the agency's strategic plan for how we will achieve our mission in the years to come. FSIS establishes strategic goals as part of a 5-year plan. We're coming to the end of our current 5-year strategic plan, which guided us from 2017 on through 2021. Our current strategic plan consists of 3 goals: to prevent foodborne illness and protect public health, to modernize inspection systems, policies, and use of scientific approaches, and to achieve operational excellence. We're looking forward to the release of our next 5-year strategic plan, which will cover 2022 through 2026, and you should expect to see that this summer. While our overarching goal will remain similar, our new plan accounts for the progress that we've made over the last 5 years. It also addresses the specific challenges in front of us and what new tools we have available to meet them. I want to talk a little more about the second strategic goal, and that is modernization. Modernization is at the core of everything we are doing and everything that we plan to do in the coming years. When I talk about modernization, it's easy to focus on our headline achievements in recent years related to swine slaughter inspection and egg products inspection. But modernization is more than implementing major policy changes. It also means reviewing and evaluating processes that are already in place to see if we need to make any adjustments. Our recently modernized inspection systems were developed using a science-based and data-driven process. We apply the same data-driven approach every time we look at a program or a policy and ask ourselves, what can we do better? And we're asking this question across the agency. Take our labeling process for an example. When we asked, how can we do this better? We found that we could streamline the process and improve the customer experience by expanding the use of generic labeling. We also asked, how can we improve our food safety messaging to consumers, which led to a modernized approach to consumer education that relies upon data from consumer research. When we look for ways to improve our process for export certificates, we began moving away from the use of paper export certificates towards an entirely electronic process. And these are just a few examples, but you can find modernization at FSIS everywhere you look. And our drive to modernize will continue to propel us forward in the coming years. Another area where it's easy to see signs of modernization is in our use of IT systems and devices. FSIS field personnel report inspection verification activities in the Public Health Information System, and most of you would recognize that as PHIS. PHIS goes hand in hand with internet service, which is necessary for FSIS personnel to input data to verify that establishments meet regulatory requirements and to respond to public health incidents promptly. FSIS views internet service as a necessary utility, like lighting, heating, and laundry services. That should be provided by establishments as a regulatory condition of receiving inspection. So to clarify this position, FSIS will be proposing an amendment to our regulations to require establishments that have an internet connection to provide FSIS access. However, the proposed amendment would not require establishments without internet access to purchase the services or to upgrade services that are not sufficient for FSIS's use. I would encourage you to review the proposed rule when it's published and to submit any comments to the Federal Register. As always, we will review each of the comments received before publishing the final rule. I'd like to talk a little more about the agency's approach to modernizing performance standards. FSIS sets pathogen reduction performance standards for raw products as targets for industry to support our public health goals. In addition to existing performance standards for Salmonella in poultry, FSIS has proposed performance standards for Campylobacter in poultry. We proposed new Campylobacter standards for comminuted chicken and comminuted turkey products in August of 2019. The revised performance standards account for a laboratory method change from direct plating to enrichment, and were established to provide the same public health benefits and industry costs as the original standards. We are also developing performance standards for poultry carcasses and intend to propose revised performance standards for these products in the Federal Register. We also proposed Salmonella performance standards for raw ground beef products in October of 2018. And we're currently working to respond to the public comments that were received before we finalize that standard. And finally, in October of 2019, we announced changes to raw pork product sampling in anticipation of developing new performance standards for Salmonella in raw pork products. These changes are based on findings from the two-phased raw pork products exploratory sampling program that sampled intact and non-intact pork cuts and comminuted products. Based on the findings from exploratory sampling programs, FSIS intends to propose Salmonella pork performance standards in raw pork cuts, both intact and non-intact, and comminuted pork products. These proposed standards will be announced in the Federal Register notice and will request comments from our stakeholders. In June of 2020, the agency proposed to expand non-0157 Shiga toxin producing E. coli, or STEC, verification sampling to all raw beef products that are currently tested for E. coli 015787. This would include raw ground beef, other raw ground beef components, and bench trim, in addition to the beef manufacturing trim already tested for non-0157 STEC at official establishments. The proposed policy would apply to all applicable imported raw beef product and ground beef product that FSIS tests at retail. The public comment period closed on September 3rd, and we're currently in the process of reviewing the comments that were received. We're also currently conducting a field study to test a modernized sampling method for raw beef manufacturing trimmings. We are testing the feasibility of replacing the N60 sampling technique with a non-destructive surface sampling cloth to collect verification samples for raw beef manufacturing trimmings. All establishments that typically receive sampling assignments for beef manufacturing trimmings will be included in the study. The study began in January, so many of you may have already seen this new sampling taking place in your plant. FSIS will analyze the N60 and the cloth samples at our field laboratories, and will compare the microbiological data between these two methods. During this field study, all N60 samples will be collected and analyzed for Salmonella, STEC, and indicator organisms. And as usual, establishments will be required to hold product until the N60 test results are available. FSIS will also collect the sample from the same lot using the cloth, which will be tested for Salmonella and indicator organisms. The cloth will not be tested for STEC because STEC is very rarely isolated from raw beef manufacturing trimmings and its detection would not add to the statistical power of the study. The study is expected to run for a minimum of 3 months, and the agency will use the data to decide whether to replace N60 with the cloth testing protocol. I mentioned earlier that it has been over 150 years since USDA was dubbed the People's Department. The landscape of America, especially rural America, has changed a lot in that time as agricultural industries have consolidated. USDA can help level the playing field for small and medium agricultural businesses and support open markets and fair competition. Small and very small plants make up more than 90% of the federally inspected plants and play an important role in feeding Americans. FSIS devotes extensive time and resources to ensure that these businesses have the tools, the guidance, and resources that they need to comply with the food safety regulations. And since 2018, we've held congressional roundtables with small and very small plants across the country. And this map shows the location of the 13 roundtables we've held so far. Although we're only able to host one roundtable in 2020 due to the coronavirus, we found a way to adapt these roundtables to a virtual format. And I'm looking forward to our first virtual small plant roundtable with plants in Northern California later this month. We will see how the virtual process works and make any needed adjustments for future roundtables. The goal is to have beneficial events for our small and very small customers. Over the last year, we have also added monthly phone calls with FSIS leadership that are open to all regulated establishments. These calls are usually held one Wednesday a month and are announced by email. Our call for February will take place later today at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. During July of 2020, FSIS also partnered with Rural Development to host a webinar on USDA assistance for small meat processors. FSIS provided an overview of the grant of inspection process, and Rural Development shared information on funding and programs that were available to support small meat processors affected by COVID-19. This webinar was recorded and can be found on the FSIS website in our newsroom tab, in the newsroom tab under speeches and presentations. Additionally, our enforcement investigation analysis officers, known to most of you as EIOs, are continuing to provide additional communication and support to small and very small plants. Beginning in fiscal year 2018, FSIS committed its EIOs to dedicate up to 25% of their time to conduct outreach to small and very small plants. Direct outreach activities include one-on-one discussions, workshops, and conferences, and the roundtable discussions focused on critical food safety topics such as HACCP, SSOPs, allergens, and pathogen testing. One outcome of this outreach will be increased communication between the FSIS district office, in-plant inspectors, and plant management of the regulated establishments. Additional FSIS resources are provided through email, on our website, and through the small plant help desk. And I encourage all small plant owners to reach out to the district offices for assistance, as well as to the EIAOs. Our outreach to small and very small plants has helped us understand what these businesses need from FSIS in order to be successful. We know that the guidelines for lethality and stabilization, known as Appendix A and B, are very important to small and very small plants engaged in further processing. The agency is currently finalizing these guidance documents and our Federal Register notice responding to comments received on the 2017 version of Appendix A and B. The revisions will include the most current best practices, including safe harbors from the 1999 versions that are still applicable to certain processes. When the revisions are issued, FSIS intends to provide a year for establishments to update their HACCP systems as necessary. This transition period should allow time for establishments that are using safe harbors that are no longer included in the 2020 guidance to adopt new processes. So looking forward, you can see that we have had a lot of work ahead of us as an agency. We're committed to supporting the USDA's efforts to end the coronavirus pandemic and tackle the challenges facing rural America and the country today. As an agency, we will remain focused on our customers and modernization of our inspection systems, policies, and programs. After serving as administrator of FSIS and now acting Deputy Undersecretary for Food Safety, I've learned that listening and collaboration are keys to success. Our engagement with industry has been and will continue to be important in helping us identify priorities to meet our goals. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak to your group today. If we have some time for discussion, I would look forward to taking questions and hearing more about what's important to you.
Okay, Paul, we've had a few questions roll in. First question is, can you expand a bit about plans for continued modernization? You probably touched on it a bit already, but due to some technical issues, some may not have heard it.
So what's the question?
Can you expand a bit about plans for continued modernization?
So we're looking forward to implementing NPIS further than what it is. We have a very good movement on that over the last year or so. We're looking forward to expansion on the swine modernization, and we're looking forward to seeing what the possibilities are for beef modernization. We currently have one establishment that is operating underneath a waiver so that we can collect information on that. We're looking forward to moving forward with the egg products inspection. We've finalized that and are moving through the implementation of that as well.
Great. Next question. What is the timeline for compliance guidelines for Appendix A and B?
Well, I wish I could give you a real good answer on that. I mean, this is something that we've been working on now for a couple of years, and we want to make sure that we get it right. We went out with the information, and then there were a lot of questions and concerns that were raised on it, so we went back to take another look at it. We're trying to make sure that we get as many of the gaps that are in the information finalized and that the information is in there so that when for people that are depending on the safe harbors, we have information there for them to use. I wish I could give you a real solid time frame on that, but hopefully it's not going to be too far down the road.
All right, next question. Are there any plans to adjust sampling practices beyond raw beef trimming given the advance of testing practices available?
For other things, other than what we're currently sampling for now?
I'm going to go ahead and assume so. The person didn't specify, but
Okay, I don't think that there's going to be anything additional than what you're going to see other than what we currently have and what are proposed. So E. coli, salmonella, some type of an indicator organism. Those will be the main things that we'll be looking at.
okay, and we're going to take it back to modernization. I should have done this one after the previous one, but I'm just now seeing it. When will the agency begin evaluating the modernization of processing establishments? As a small business, why are we limited on when we can operate, but FDA plants can run 24/7? Our inspector is barely present during our operations, so why should we be limited?
So the reason that there's a limitation there is because the way that the laws are written, saying that and we get authorized money to provide that service. So underneath the act, it provides for 8 hours per day of inspection that is free of charge. Anything outside of that, we have to provide underneath overtime services. So that's why there's a restriction there. I can tell you that there's been a lot of interest in this, and a lot of it brought on because of COVID-19, but I don't think that COVID-19 necessarily created the issue either. So I'm not trying to suggest that, but the overtime and the amount of overtime that plants pay is something that we have heard from different congressional people over the last year, and we've been supportive of things that they've been proposing that are within the limits of what the Federal Meat Inspection Act covers. So I can't really go into a whole lot of detail. I don't have any way of knowing what Congress is actually going to pass, but I can tell you that there is interest in the amount of overtime that small and very small plants pay.
Next question. Can you be more specific about the potential release timeline of salmonella standards for beef and pork?
I'll have to look at that and I'll get some further guidance on that. And again, even the additional information is just going to be an estimate, but I'll get a closer estimate to Joe. He can get it out to everyone and the members. Does that sound all right?
That sounds great. We'll be sure to spread the word for you, help you out. Next question. How does your agency partner with others such as OSHA when it comes to audits?
Well, as far as audits, if we're talking about anything for safety of that has to do with plant personnel, we're not involved in there. The only part that we would be involved in with any type of OSHA audit would be with personnel that of our own. So the inspectors, veterinarians. We don't get involved in audits that OSHA is doing on plants.
Okay, next question. Could you elaborate a little on agency's vaccine strategy? Are you polling and understand if your employees are willing? What is that response rate? Would you like us to include inspection personnel in our vaccine count as we work with public health officials?
Well, I would absolutely love it if inspectors and veterinarians, other FSIS personnel that are in a certain area where you have facilities, if there's a way to have them included and you have a way to get the vaccines sooner than what they do, we would absolutely appreciate that. We're not making the vaccine mandatory. It's still going to be voluntary. I don't know exactly what the percent of people that would voluntarily take the vaccine. I imagine that it would be probably very similar to other polls that have been done on it. My understanding is that somewhere around 50% said that they would take it. Another 25% are kind of on the fence, and then an additional 25 say that they would not take the vaccine. So I imagine it would be somewhat similar to that, but we haven't actually done any actual polling of our employees.
And one more question to round out this presentation. Is the agency continuing to evaluate foreign material issues, specifically when raw materials are shipped to a further processor versus direct to consumer?
Well, I think everyone knows that we do have an interest in foreign material, and everyone really needs to take a very close look at foreign material, how foreign materials are getting into products, in any ways that you have that you can make some adjustments so that the foreign materials are not showing up. We understand that things happen at times, and foreign materials get in there for reasons that maybe haven't really been thought about, or it is an actual accident. But there are times when foreign materials are in there because the processes that are in place are not real stringent in order to keep the products out. And those are the ones that we're mostly concerned about, when it's something that's recurring and the plant doesn't pay attention to it and try to fix the problem and prevent the foreign material from getting in there.
Paul, thank you so much. We appreciate your time this morning. I know you got a lot on your plate every day, and we sure appreciate you spending a little bit of time with us. And we will hope to have you again in person as soon as we can. Thank you.
All right. I appreciate your time. I appreciate everyone's time. And I am absolutely looking forward to attending in person.